Our safari started at an hotel in Nairobi where we met our driver Jenga.
Now we are heading to Samburu.
And the rest of our group, Aruna, Diru and Babit Shah. The journey to Samburu, the first reserve on the tour, took about 5 hours, so there were a couple of comfort stops along the way where we could start buying souvenirs. After trial and error, we found that we should never pay more than about a quarter of the original asking price, and often even less. The villages got smaller and scruffier until we got into the countryside. And finally the wide open spaces of Samburu National Reserve, where we got our first sighting of impala, a couple of young males sorting out the pecking order. We stayed at the Samburu Game Lodge, which bid us caribou, Swahili for welcome. We had a quick look at the gardens, and were wished a further caribou by the vervet monkey at the entrance.
Just proceed to the reception, please. The reception right there, the bags will follow you there to the reception.
We then went to check in at reception. By now it was lunchtime.
Welcome to Kenya.
Joining us for lunch was a superb starling and a bright agama lizard. The lodge was built in 1963 and is made up of cottages spread among the trees. Ours was a detached one with twin beds and ensuite facilities. It overlooked the Owasso Nyairo River, home to many crocodiles. Afternoon game drives start at 4 o'clock. The first thing we saw was a yellow-necked spurfowl, a common, noisy bird found in bushed grasslands. We spotted some giraffes and were immediately joined by other vehicles, since the drivers are in constant radio contact with each other. They turned out to be reticulated giraffes. The spots are polygons, bordered by white lines. They can live up to 28 years, and the spots get darker with age. They feed on shrubs, trees and leaves. Gerenuk are also known as giraffe gazelle because of their long necks. We came across a family with a small baby. They can live up to 12 years. The male weaver bird builds the nest, and the female will only use it if it comes up to her very exacting standards. Is there something under this tree? Yeah, something's definitely moving there. It's a cheetah, and now everybody is coming for a look. This beautiful animal is the fastest hunter in Africa. It can run at 70 miles an hour, but only in short bursts. A chase lasts 20 seconds to a minute, and if it catches its prey, it suffocates it by biting its throat from underneath. Ultramarine guinea fowls scratch insects and fruit from the ground. They roost in trees at night. The dik-dik, named for their alarm call, are the smallest of all antelope. They mate for life, and only the male has horns. They have to cover their tracks very carefully, as they could end up as lunch for all sorts of predators, including this martial eagle, which caught one earlier. There are lots of red-billed hornbill in Samburu. Impala are the commonest antelope in Africa. Herds consist of large numbers of females, with one male. When startled, the whole herd leaps about to confuse predators. They can jump distances of 30 feet and 8 feet high. Only the male has horns, which are lyre-shaped. Back at the lodge, the crocodiles were coming ashore for the tidbits left out for them every night by the hotel. They can live for up to 300 years. Next morning, it was up at 5:30, coffee at 6, and off at 6:30. You have to do the drive early in the morning before it gets so hot that the animals go into the shade. The first thing we saw was a group of buffalo in the distance, but they were obviously camera shy and refused to turn to faces. Even the dik-dik weren't performing this morning. Dead trees all over the park are the results of elephants stripping the bark to eat. At least the guinea fowl gave a bit of a show. Up in the tree are a couple of parrots. Heading from the main track, we came across a big termite mound. These are ventilation towers for underground nests. There must be something special here. Vehicles are crowding in from all over. Ah, a leopard in the undergrowth. They're very shy, and it quickly went to hide in a tree. But we could still see it. Leopards are the most difficult large animals to spot, and this one soon disappeared into the bush. More movement in the undergrowth. Oh, it's only another impala. Ah, but it's part of a mixed herd with Gerenuk and Grant's gazelle. They're the greyish ones with the stripe down the side. This daft Gerenuk has got its horns stuck in a young acacia bush. The hornbills are having a good laugh at him. That's a dome palm, and this is a Cape starling. Then it was back to the lodge for a hearty breakfast in the open-sided dining room overlooking the river. We had a few hours to explore the grounds of the lodge and meet the other residents. The cheeky, intelligent vervet monkeys are considered a pest by hotel owners, as they are experts at racing through restaurants grabbing bananas, mangoes, or anything else they can get their hands on. Our hotel employed a young lad with a catapult to try to discourage them. Across the river was a tree full of yellow weaver birds. Ooh, what's this? It's a monitor lizard. The monkeys didn't seem too keen on this. Monitors are the largest of all lizards, and they live near rivers and open water. Down by the river, the croc was basking in the sun. At 4 we headed upriver on another game drive. The first thing we found was a family of baboons. They're a very social animal and spend a lot of time grooming each other. The common waterbuck is identified by the white target on its bum. The oryx is a dry country animal, though it's good at finding water by digging in riverbeds. It may have given rise to the myth of the unicorn, since from the side it appears as though it only has one horn. If attacked, the oryx will defend itself by skewering its attacker. The curry bustard is the heaviest flying bird there is. At 40 pounds in weight and 50 inches long, this really is a big bustard. Just around this corner was a herd of elephants. A group like this is always all female, the males living solitary lives. They live for 60 to 70 years and produce milk from puberty to death. Any calf can and does feed from any adult female in the herd. The gestation period is 22 months.
Yeah, it's coming too close.
We're off. At the top of the acacia is a shrike. We drove up to the viewpoint overlooking the whole of the Samburu Reserve. This was a rare opportunity to get out of the vehicles, compare notes with other safariers, and discuss the rest of the trip with Jenga. As we were leaving the reserve the next morning, we got our one and only view of ostrich, the black and white one being the male. They can run at 70 miles an hour and lay up to 24 eggs at a time. We also had our best view of grey-crowned cranes. We were astonished to see camels, but they turned out to be domestic. As we motored back south, we had excellent views of the 17,000-foot snow-capped peak of Mount Kenya. Just outside Nyeri is the Outspan Country Club, where we had lunch. It's set in the middle of lovely landscaped gardens. We had to leave our main suitcase here, as only hand luggage was allowed where we were going next. From Outspan, the hotel bus took us into the Abadares National Park to the world-famous Treetops Lodge, which stands at 6,450 feet above sea level. It's an enormous tree house built on stilts overlooking a waterhole and salt lick. It was here in 1952 that a young English girl went to bed as a princess and got up as Queen Elizabeth II. That was in the first tree house, destroyed in the Mau Mau troubles, the remains of which can be seen across the lake. As well as the main viewing area on the roof, there are lots of others spread throughout the building. The corridors are very narrow, with trees growing through them, and the bedrooms are minute. This is the Queen Elizabeth suite, one of only 2 with bathrooms. There are a couple of hides at ground level that let us get really close to totally unsuspecting animals as they came to the waterhole. First to arrive were the warthogs. They're a type of pig which can grow to 5 foot long and weigh 23.5 stone. They've got 2 pairs of tusks, which they use to defend themselves. Next on the scene was a pair of Defaso waterbuck. These don't have the target circle, just a white bum. Has he seen us? Has he seen us? Let's hope not. The lodge puts seeds out for the weaver birds. They also like to eat fruit and make a lot of noise. This heron liked sitting here. It was there for most of the day. As dusk fell, the buffalo started to arrive, accompanied by more waterbuck. He looks an old fella. The lodge provides fresh water now because before, the elephants used to dig up the mains to get at it. But primarily the animals come for the salts in the lake and the puddles round it. The 7-course evening meal, the best we had all trip, was interrupted by the arrival of the elephants. Fortunately, we had a night vision lens so we're able to see the baby taking its first steps away from its mother. We went back to Outspan for breakfast and our luggage, before driving on to the equator. There we were shown the Coriolis effect.
So we are going to start in the north and then go to the south and then finish on the equator line.
Water draining through a small hole north of the equator will spin clockwise. South of the equator, it will spin anti-clockwise. Exactly on the equator, it goes straight down without spinning at all.
We also have the certificate to prove that you crossed the equator. This is
Next stop was at the souvenir shops at the entrance to Thompson Falls. This is where the Iguazu River plunges 245 feet into a boulder-strewn gorge. Further down the road we had a good view of the Great Rift Valley, which stretches some 4,000 miles from Israel to Mozambique. Kenya, Safari Kenya. Having driven down into the valley, we entered the Lake Nakuru National Park, one of Kenya's most densely animal-populated wetland parks. Once in the park, we were welcomed by Defasa waterbuck
Welcome to Kenya.
and a big male baboon. We stayed at Lake Nakuru Lodge, where we went straight in for lunch before going to check out our cabin.
High maintenance of the garden.
The lodge is very close to the lake, and the animals come right up to the fence. The park is home to thousands of pelicans, as well as spoonbills and ibis. There are also large herds of antelope, in this case a group of adolescent male impala. Nearby, a couple of white rhino were nonchalantly mowing the grass and fertilizing it. The name is thought to come from the Afrikaans for wide, because it has a wide mouth. The alkaline lake covers about a third of the park. Pelicans wash the alkali off their feathers in the freshwater streams that feed the lake. Lake Nakuru's greatest claim to fame is the large number of flamingos that flock every year to its shores, although numbers have declined recently. As we left the lake, we came across another white rhino with a calf. This may live to around 40 years and grow to 425 stones. They're gregarious animals, but don't like people coming too close to their young. So I think we'll be off now. Near the water's edge were a small herd of Thomson's gazelle, the commonest gazelle in Africa. They're smaller than Grant's and have a black stripe. Then at last our first lion. These three females seemed to do nothing but sleep in the grass, though there was evidence of a much earlier kill. We left Nakuru on appalling roads, which resulted in blowing the radiator on the van. We hitched a ride in another, and we're able to film just how bad the roads were from the front passenger seat. There's more than one way of doing a safari. It was a relief to get off these roads and enter the Masai Mara, where we stayed at Kikarok Lodge, set in beautiful grounds, and where we had a semi-detached bungalow. Because our van was still broken down, we went on the afternoon game drive in one of the hotel's 4x4s. The first animal we came across was a hartebeest. Then we found the carcass of a wildebeest, the result of a recent lion kill. A hyena was tidying up after them. It was the time of the short rains, which didn't do much for the zebra's tempers. It didn't seem to bother the elephants though. These are the same type as the ones we saw earlier, but the rain made them look black. The driver kept the engine running in case we had to beat a hasty retreat. We spotted a couple of black rhino, an adult and a juvenile. They're very shy and immediately hightailed it for the woods. Being in the 4x4, we managed to follow them quite a way. The rain had stopped, and this lioness seemed bored with everything. But when enough vehicles had pulled up, she decided to pose for the cameras. Have you got my best side? A bit further down the track was a mother lioness with her cub. Is it tea time yet, Mum? No. Behave yourself. Why don't you go and play with your cousins over there? This one wasn't so playful. It was the only adult male lion we came across. Then it was back to the lodge for the night. Next morning we were up early again, but not so early as those going for a balloon ride over the Mara. These giraffe were sorting out the hierarchy by playing bumps-a-daisy. They were common giraffe, which have more complicated spots, not as sharp-edged as the reticulated giraffe. The zebra seemed a lot calmer this morning. A herd of topi was grazing. We thought the hyena was after one, but they ran off in different directions. The Masai Mara can be very dry, but there are small rivers creating oases. The fruits of the sausage tree are up to 2 feet long and can weigh 15 pounds. In the brush was a small pack of jackals. These normally nocturnal animals are scavengers and predators of small mammals, birds and reptiles. This strange beast turned out to be canned students on a field trip. The hartebeest are permanently on the lookout for predators. Someone should have told this topi to look before crossing the road. The main wildebeest migration ended a week or two back, but a few small groups were still hanging around. Perhaps they didn't want to leave their topi and impala friends. These are nobody's friend. The ungainly vulture is remarkably graceful in flight. They often roost in trees whilst on the lookout for a tasty feed of rotten meat. Suddenly the wildebeest realised that they should have already moved on, and they set off at the gallop. After a while they slowed to a more sustainable pace. Every May around 1.5 million wildebeest migrate from the plains to the woods in search of vegetation. They return in November as summer rains water the plains. The herd headed into the distance back to the Serengeti in Tanzania. Back at the lodge, some people went to the swimming pool, others round the gardens, and we went to the raised walkway over the surrounding wetland to the hippo pool. There are at least 45 hippos in this pool. Hippos spend most of the daylight hours submerged in water to keep cool, because they don't have sweat glands. The name comes from the Greek, meaning river horse. The ears, eyes and nostrils are high on the head, so the rest of the body can stay submerged. They can weigh up to 35 tons, and the skin is up to 2 inches thick. They have a bulky body, stumpy legs, and enormous heads, but eat only 80 pounds of vegetation a night. This female had a 2-day-old calf, which would have weighed 7 stones at birth. The mouth can gape to 150 degrees. Overcrowding in the pool can lead to the occasional spat. Through it all, these heron only had eyes for each other. The final game drive started with a big troop of baboons. The youngsters were having a good old rough and tumble. It all happened under the watchful eye of the adults. Jenga was sharp-eyed enough to spot this owl. The plover's alarm call could well have been caused by this hyena. There was a vulture there as well. And a marabou stork. These are right thieves, you know. With all this lot around, there must be something big going on. There is too. 4 adolescent male lions with a kill. A buffalo. One of the lions was still picking half-heartedly at it. The others look completely stuffed. It's a good job, really. You wouldn't want them this close if they were still hungry. Don't worry, there'll be enough left for you. The zebra should be safe for the time being. This is a buff-crested bustard. The rains had started again, and this secretary bird looks thoroughly bedraggled. No cat likes to get wet, and this lioness was no exception. She's fed up.
Kenya, Safari Kenya.
Then it was time to return to Nairobi to go on our next adventure.